The hidden truth. The small, peaceful village of Larkfield sat quietly under the vast blue sky. Children played in the fields, their laughter echoing through the air as farmers tended to their crops. Life was simple, calm, and far from the troubles of the universe. But this peaceful day would be the last of its kind for the people of Earth. Far away, in the cold, distant reaches of space, the Galactic Council was meeting. The Council, made up of powerful alien species, governed over many worlds, each under their strict rule. Earth, with its primitive technology and peaceful nature, had always been a small dot in the grand galaxy. It had been largely ignored for centuries. But that was about to change. A small ship, hardly noticed among the stars, slipped into Earth's orbit. It was cloaked in secrecy, its intentions hidden from the planet below. Inside the ship, a group of Galactic Council agents made their final preparations. Their mission was clear, though cruel. They were to take one human child. The Council had learned something about Earth that they didn't fully understand. Human children, despite their apparent weakness, possessed something powerful within them. A potential that could change the course of the galaxy. The child they had chosen was no ordinary one. His name was Eli. And though he was only 7 years old, the Council believed he held the key to unlocking a new weapon, one that could make them unstoppable. The agents moved swiftly, their technology allowing them to sneak past Earth's defenses unnoticed. They landed on the outskirts of Larkfield, far from the prying eyes of the locals. Eli, unaware of the danger approaching him, continued to play in the meadow, chasing butterflies. The soft breeze tugged at his hair, and the sun warmed his face. To him, this was just another normal day. Suddenly, the peaceful scene was shattered. A group of alien soldiers emerged from the shadows, their movements fast and precise. Eli didn't have time to react. Before he could even scream, he was surrounded, and a bright light enveloped him. The last thing he saw before he was taken was his mother, running toward him, shouting his name. But it was too late. Eli was gone. The Galactic Council's agents took the child aboard their ship, leaving no trace behind. The small village of Larkfield would soon wake up to the horror of what had just happened. Earth had never experienced such an event before. The people had always been safe, free from the chaos of the galaxy. Now, they were caught in something much larger than they could understand. On Earth, the news spread quickly. A child had been taken, abducted in the middle of the day, with no explanation. Panic spread across the world. Families feared for their children, and the authorities scrambled to find out what had happened. But there were no answers. The Galactic Council was too powerful, and their reach extended too far. Back in the stars, Eli was taken to the heart of the Galactic Council's operations. A massive space station orbited a dark planet, hidden away from prying eyes. It was here that the Council conducted their most secretive experiments. Eli, now trapped in a cold, sterile room, had no idea why he was there. He was just a child, frightened and alone. The only thing he knew for sure was that the beings around him were not human. The Council had big plans for Eli. They didn't understand humans. How could they? They had seen countless alien species evolve, and none had the potential that humans seemed to possess. The child was a test. They believed that by experimenting on him, they could unlock the secret to humanity's strength, and more importantly, its ability to create new dangerous technologies. They had no idea what they were truly dealing with. Eli was subjected to painful tests. They connected him to machines, injected strange substances into his body, and exposed him to conditions no human should endure. But despite all their efforts, they could not break him. The child refused to give in. Though terrified, Eli clung to his memories of Earth, the face of his mother, and the life he once knew. He did not understand why this was happening, but he knew one thing: he would never let them control him. Back on Earth, the disappearance of Eli was beginning to cause a ripple across the planet. The global community had been forced to confront the reality that their world was not as safe as they had believed. Governments met in secret, and whispers of extraterrestrial involvement began to spread. But there was little anyone could do. Earth had no military power capable of challenging the vast might of the Galactic Council. They were helpless, unable to stop what had happened to one of their own. But unknown to the Galactic Council, Earth was not as weak as they thought. A quiet resistance began to form. Ordinary people, shocked and outraged by the abduction, started to ask questions. Who were these aliens? What did they want with their children? And why did they target Earth? Admiral Kira Thorne, a retired military leader, was one of the first to make a connection. She had always known that Earth's peaceful nature made it an easy target for more powerful forces in the galaxy. She had spent years studying the stars, searching for signs of life beyond Earth, and now she realized that the galaxy had taken an interest in them. But this was more than just a simple invasion. It was a message. The Galactic Council had made a grave mistake. The disappearance of Eli was not just the start of a tragedy. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Humanity would not let this go unanswered. They would fight back. They would burn the stars if they had to. And they would take back what was stolen from them, one way or another. As the story of Eli's abduction spread, whispers of revenge began to take root in the hearts of people across the world. Earth had always been overlooked, but that would change. The hidden truth of their potential, the power within them, would soon come to light. The Galactic Council had no idea what was coming for them. The silent resistance. The dark and vast expanse of space offered no comfort. The Galactic Council's headquarters was an imposing structure built into the rocky surface of a forgotten planet. It was here that Eli had been taken, held in a cold, metallic chamber. The alien guards, tall and intimidating, stood watch over him, their eyes glowing with a strange, otherworldly hue. Eli's hands trembled as he sat on the hard floor, trying to make sense of the nightmare he was now trapped in. He had been taken without warning, and now he was alone in this alien place, surrounded by beings who showed no kindness or understanding. The experiments they conducted on him had been nothing short of brutal, and though he was still only a child, Eli had begun to grasp that these beings were not like the kind-hearted people of Earth. There was something cold and heartless about them. Despite his fear, Eli's spirit remained unbroken. He had learned quickly that no matter how many machines they connected him to, no matter how many tests they subjected him to, he could endure. The memory of his mother, her warm embrace, and the safety of his home was always there, a flickering light in the dark. He refused to let them take that away. Back on Earth, the world had begun to change in ways no one could have predicted. The disappearance of one child had become the catalyst for a larger, more dangerous movement. The government, once in denial about the existence of extraterrestrial life, now found themselves forced to confront a terrifying reality. The Galactic Council, a powerful force with control over many worlds, had targeted Earth. And for what? The questions were piling up, and answers were in short supply. Admiral Kira Thorne, now a leader in the growing resistance, had been studying the Galactic Council for years. She had known about their influence in the galaxy, the way they controlled and manipulated weaker civilizations. But the abduction of Eli had shown her the Council's true nature, a nature that Earth could not afford to ignore any longer. They had underestimated humanity's potential, and now they would pay for it. Kira met with a group of scientists and former military officers in a hidden underground base. The air was thick with tension. The faces around the table were grim, but there was a fire in their eyes. They knew that if they didn't act now, Earth would be lost. "We need to figure out what they want with the child," Kira said, her voice steady, but filled with determination. "And we need to act fast." The group nodded in agreement. Eli was just the tip of the iceberg, and they couldn't afford to let the Galactic Council continue to manipulate Earth. The first step was finding out what the Council's true intentions were, but that was easier said than done. The Council's forces were too powerful, their reach too wide. The Resistance had no military power to speak of. Earth's defense systems were primitive compared to the advanced technology of the Council. But they had something the Council did not: the will to fight, the strength to resist, and most importantly, they had each other. Kiera's team began their work in secret, gathering intelligence, studying the Council's patterns, and trying to uncover any weaknesses in their operations. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Every piece of information they found was like a small victory, a sign that the Galactic Council's grip on Earth was not as secure as they had believed. Meanwhile, Eli continued to endure in the cold, sterile chamber of the Council's base. They had tried to break him, to force him to reveal the secrets they believed he held. But no matter what they did, Eli remained silent. He knew they were waiting for something, but he refused to give them the satisfaction of knowing what it was. His mind wandered back to his mother, his village, and his life on Earth. He longed to return to those peaceful days, to feel the warmth of the sun on his face again. But deep down, Eli knew that things would never be the same. He could never go back to the way it was. The Galactic Council had taken something precious from him, and he would make sure they paid for it. Days turned into weeks, and Eli grew more determined with each passing moment. The experiments continued, but his resolve only strengthened. He was no longer just a scared child. He was becoming something more, something the Council would soon learn to fear. Back on Earth, the resistance was growing. News of Eli's abduction had spread like wildfire, and with it came a wave of anger and defiance. People who had once been complacent were now asking questions, demanding answers. Ordinary citizens were stepping up, joining the cause, and fighting back in any way they could. The Galactic Council had awoken something deep within humanity, a desire to protect their own, to fight for what was right. Kiera and her team had learned more about the Council's plans, and what they'd discovered only fueled their determination. The Galactic Council had plans to expand their control over the galaxy, to take Earth and use it as a weapon in their quest for dominance. But they had miscalculated. They had underestimated the human spirit. The fight for Earth was just beginning. And though the odds were stacked against them, the resistance knew one thing for sure: they would not back down. Eli was not just a symbol of what had been taken. He was a symbol of what Earth was capable of the power that lay hidden within humanity. And the Galactic Council would soon learn that underestimating humans was a grave mistake. The first strike. Time passed in agonizing silence as Eli continued to endure the Council's cruel treatment. Every day, the aliens tried new methods to extract information from him, but no matter what they did, he remained resolute. His body ached, and his mind felt like it was slowly breaking under the pressure, but Eli refused to yield. He knew that he was humanity's only hope. He would not allow the Galactic Council to control his mind or spirit. Back on Earth, the resistance had grown bolder. Kiera Thorne, once a soldier known for her calculated precision, had transformed into a leader of a desperate rebellion. The information she and her team had gathered about the Galactic Council had painted a terrifying picture. The Council had plans to launch a full-scale invasion of Earth, and they had the power to destroy entire planets with their advanced weaponry. Kiera understood the stakes now. Earth was not just a planet to be conquered, it was a symbol. The Council needed it to advance their plans of domination across the galaxy, and if they succeeded, the consequences would be catastrophic. But Kiera was not about to let that happen. She had seen the strength of the human spirit, and she knew that Earth could fight back. A meeting was called in the Resistance's hidden command center. The walls were lined with makeshift monitors and old communication devices, but Kiera knew this was the last chance. They needed to act, and they needed to act fast. The time for gathering information was over. Now was the time for retaliation. "We've discovered the location of one of their key military bases," Kiera said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "It's vulnerable. If we strike now, we could cripple their operations on this side of the galaxy." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. This was it, the first strike against the Galactic Council, the opening salvo in a war that Earth had never prepared for. But it wasn't just about taking out a base. It was about sending a message. Kira had already seen the alien forces underestimate humanity, and now it was time to show them that the people of Earth would not go quietly into the night. The strike would not be easy. They had no ships capable of taking on the Council's advanced warships, no fleet to rival the enemy's forces. But the Resistance had one advantage: their knowledge of the terrain. They knew the terrain of their planet, and more importantly, they knew the human mind. The Resistance would strike swiftly, with precision, and use their ingenuity to find ways to attack without being caught. The plan was simple but risky. A small fleet of modified human ships would infiltrate the Council's base, sabotage their communication systems, and cripple their defenses. They would leave no trace, no evidence of who had attacked, and by the time the Council realized what had happened, it would be too late. As the planning began, Eli sat in his dark, cold chamber, unaware of the events unfolding on Earth. His mind was focused solely on surviving each new test, each new pain. But even in the face of unimaginable suffering, his thoughts never strayed from Earth. His home, his family, his friends, they were the reason he kept going. If he could escape, if he could somehow return to his people, he would bring back with him the strength they needed to stand up against the Galactic Council. The Resistance forces moved quickly, gathering their makeshift fleet and preparing for the most dangerous mission they had ever attempted. The stakes were higher than they had ever been. But Kira's heart was full of determination. She knew that if they succeeded in this first strike, they would show the Galactic Council that Earth was no longer a helpless planet. Earth was now a force to be reckoned with. As they launched the attack, Kira couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. Each moment that passed could be their last. The Galactic Council would soon discover that they had underestimated humanity, and that would be their downfall. Meanwhile, on the Council's homeworld, leaders convened in their council chambers, discussing the next phase of their conquest. They were confident that their forces would soon crush any resistance on Earth, and their victory was all but assured. But they had no idea that the humans they had underestimated were already preparing to strike back. Back on Earth, the Resistance's attack was underway. The small fleet of human ships broke through the Council's outer defenses and descended on their base with lightning speed. The aliens were caught off guard, their forces scattered and unprepared for the sudden assault. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The attack caused chaos within the Council's ranks. The human ships were swift, moving with precision, evading detection at every turn. The mission had been a success. They had crippled the base, destroyed critical systems, and left the Council reeling from the damage. Kira stood in front of a makeshift map, her eyes scanning the results of the attack. The damage was significant, but this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council would soon retaliate, but the message had been sent. Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored. Eli, still locked away in his prison, had no idea of the battle being fought on his behalf. But the wheels of war were turning, and soon his role in the fight for Earth would become clear. He was not just a captive anymore. He was a symbol of humanity's resistance. The Galactic Council had made their first mistake by underestimating humanity's strength. Now, they would have to face the consequences. The spark of rebellion. The success of the first strike sent ripples throughout the galaxy, shaking the Galactic Council's confidence. While they scrambled to recover from the devastating attack on their base, a quiet rebellion was spreading across their empire, one that would not be easily contained. Humanity had proven it could strike back, and the rest of the galaxy was beginning to take notice. Back on Earth, Kira Thorne was in the midst of preparing for the next phase of their plan. The small victory against the Galactic Council was only the beginning, and she knew that if they were to succeed, they needed to keep up the pressure. The attack had shown that humanity was capable of more than just surviving. It could fight back, and it could win. But as Kira paced back and forth in the command center, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still not prepared for what was coming. The Galactic Council was not a group that would bow easily, and they had vast resources at their disposal. Earth's small fleet of modified ships and makeshift weapons would not be enough to defeat them in the long run. "We need to strike them where it hurts the most," Kiera said to her team, her voice sharp with determination. "Their leadership. We need to disrupt their command structure." Her words hung in the air as her team absorbed the weight of the mission. This wasn't just another sabotage operation. It was a direct assault on the heart of the Galactic Council. If they could cripple the leadership, the entire council would falter. But Kiera knew that such a mission was not only risky, it could be suicide. Meanwhile, Eli's situation grew worse with each passing day. The experiments, the tortures, the endless hours of deprivation, it all began to take its toll on the young boy. His body had been pushed beyond its limits, and his mind was slowly unraveling from the constant abuse. Yet through it all, Eli never lost sight of his purpose. He knew that humanity was counting on him. His pain, his suffering, it was a small price to pay if it meant saving his people from the Galactic Council's tyranny. But what the Council didn't know was that Eli's resilience had an unexpected side effect. As they tried to break him, his mind had begun to adapt to their methods. The more they pushed, the more his human spirit fought back. Slowly, he began to develop an ability that he hadn't known was possible, a way to tap into the alien technologies that surrounded him, to understand their systems and technology on an intuitive level. The Council had underestimated the strength of the human mind. They believed that their advanced technology and cruel methods would break him. But in reality, they were creating a new weapon, one that could help turn the tide in the war that was already brewing. Kiera's plan was set in motion. Her team prepared to launch a series of covert strikes on key Council installations, targeting military facilities, communication hubs, and most importantly, the leaders themselves. They would hit fast, hit hard, and leave no trace. The Galactic Council had already been weakened by the loss of their base, but now it was time to strike at the core of their power. As the fleet assembled for the mission, Kiera couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. Each day that passed brought them closer to a full-scale war, one that would decide the fate of Earth and countless other planets. The time for hesitation was over. The time for rebellion had come. The first target was a high-ranking Council official, a commander responsible for overseeing the Council's operations in the outer reaches of the galaxy. The Resistance had uncovered information suggesting that this commander held the key to the Council's next move. If they could eliminate him, it would cripple the enemy's strategic planning. The mission was dangerous. Kiera knew that they would be outnumbered, outgunned, and vastly outmatched. But Earth had something that the Galactic Council didn't: determination. The humans had faced their worst fears, had been pushed to the edge, and yet they still stood strong. That was something no alien force could understand. The team infiltrated the commander's stronghold with the precision of a well-oiled machine. They moved quickly, slipping past guards, disabling security systems, and entering the heart of the Council's operations. It was a delicate dance, one wrong move, and they would be caught. But they pressed on, knowing that every second counted. As Kiera and her team made their way to the commander's chambers, they could hear the faint sounds of voices ahead. The mission was almost complete. The only thing standing between them and their target was a handful of guards, and they would not be a challenge for the highly trained Resistance fighters. With a swift, silent motion, Kiera signaled to her team, and within moments, the guards were neutralized. The commander, a tall, reptilian alien with cold eyes, stood before them, oblivious to the danger that had crept into his lair. End of the line. Kiera muttered under her breath as she raised her weapon. But before she could strike, the commander's eyes widened in realization. You're human," he said, his voice laced with both fear and disbelief. Kiera didn't hesitate. In one smooth motion, she ended the commander's life, taking away a key figure in the Galactic Council's leadership. But even as the alien crumpled to the floor, Kiera knew that this victory came with a heavy price. The Council would not take kindly to this, and they would retaliate with all their might. The counterattack. The Galactic Council was reeling from the loss of one of their top commanders. But they weren't the type to back down easily. Kira Thorne knew this well. The rebellion's success had made waves across the galaxy, but now it was only a matter of time before the full wrath of the Council came crashing down on Earth. The calm before the storm had ended, and it was time for humanity to face the next phase of their fight. Back on Earth, preparations were underway for a counteroffensive. Kira and her team had taken the first steps, but they knew they couldn't win this war with only a handful of surprise attacks. The Galactic Council had vast resources, and the rebellion needed more than just their small fleet. It needed unity, allies, and the full might of the human spirit. "We've shaken them," Kira said as she stood before her team. "But they'll come for us. They'll come harder than ever, and we need to be ready. We'll take the fight to their doorstep if we have to." The room fell silent. Every resistance fighter knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a war for Earth. It was a fight for the freedom of countless planets that had fallen under the Council's oppressive rule. Each victory they scored brought more hope to the galaxy, but each loss would push them closer to the brink of extinction. The next step in their plan was to rally as many systems as they could to their cause. Humanity had already proven its strength, but they needed to show the galaxy that they were not alone. Allies were essential if they were to stand a chance against the might of the Galactic Council. Kira's eyes scanned the holographic map of the galaxy in front of her. The Galactic Council's forces were concentrated in several key areas, but there were weak points, systems on the edge of the Empire where dissent had already begun to grow. The rebellion had to move fast. One misstep, and the Council would tighten its grip on the galaxy, quashing the uprising before it could fully blossom. "We need to act quickly," Kira said. "We'll reach out to every system that might be sympathetic to our cause. The more allies we have, the harder it will be for the Council to crush us." As the team prepared for their next mission, Kira couldn't help but think of Eli. She knew he was still out there, enduring unimaginable pain, but she also knew that Eli had proven to be far more than a helpless child. His resilience, his will to survive, it was something the Council could never have anticipated. Eli was a symbol of everything humanity stood for: hope, strength, and an unyielding desire for freedom. Meanwhile, Eli's situation had taken an unexpected turn. His body had endured untold suffering, but something deep within him had awakened. The experiments the Galactic Council had subjected him to had altered his mind in ways they hadn't anticipated. What had started as a form of torture had slowly turned into something far more dangerous for the Council: knowledge. In the depths of the prison, Eli's fingers moved with purpose. The technology surrounding him responded to his touch. The systems, once used to break him, now recognized his presence as an integral part of their design. Eli had tapped into something. The very alien machinery that had been used to subjugate him was now at his command. With a quiet hum, the chamber around him began to change. Systems powered on. Screens flickered to life. Eli's mind raced as he connected to the controls. He didn't fully understand what he was doing, but instinctively, he knew it was the key to escaping. The machines, which had once been instruments of his torment, were now part of his escape plan. The rebellion had underestimated him, but they were about to see the full extent of his power. Back in Kira's command center, the preparations for the next wave of strikes were underway. They had made contact with several systems that were willing to lend their support. The Council had been left scrambling in the aftermath of their defeat, but Kira knew the Council's retaliation would be swift and brutal. They couldn't afford to waste time. The rebellion needed to stay ahead of the curve. And then, just as they were about to launch their next offensive, a transmission came through. It was a signal from Eli. "We've got a problem," Kira said, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Eli, he's done something." Her mind raced. What had Eli done? How had he managed to break through the prison's security? The transmission revealed a dark and disturbing truth. Eli had somehow accessed the Galactic Council's mainframe, a feat that was thought impossible. He had managed to turn their own technology against them. In the span of just a few hours, Eli had unlocked information that could change the course of the war. He had found the coordinates of the Galactic Council's primary command center, hidden deep within the heart of the galaxy. Kiera's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The opportunity they had been waiting for. The chance to strike at the heart of the Council's power. "This is it," Kiera said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "This is our chance to take the fight directly to them. We have to hit the command center. And we have to do it now." With the new intelligence from Eli, Kiera's team mobilized quickly. They would launch a full-scale assault on the Galactic Council's primary command center. But they knew that this mission could end the war, or lead to their annihilation. The stakes had never been higher. As the fleet prepared for the attack, Kiera couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to embark on a journey that would change everything. Eli's bravery, humanity's resolve, and the support of their newfound allies, all of it was leading to this moment. They were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. The final assault. The tension was palpable as Kiera and her team prepared for what would undoubtedly be their most dangerous mission yet. The coordinates from Eli had led them to the very heart of the Galactic Council's power, the command center that controlled the vast machinery of the Empire. This was no longer just a rebellion. It was a full-scale war for freedom, and the stakes had never been higher. Kiera stood before her team, her gaze intense, each word heavy with purpose. "This is it. The Council believes they've won. They think we're weak, scattered, but they're wrong. We've come this far, and we won't stop now. We'll strike fast, strike hard, and we will make them pay for every life they've destroyed." Her words hung in the air, stirring something deep within her soldiers. These were not just fighters. These were humans who had endured endless suffering, fought against impossible odds, and refused to bow to an oppressive empire. They had all come together for this one moment, and no one was going to stop them now. The fleet had assembled. Dozens of ships, both human-made and allied vessels from distant systems, were ready to launch. The rebellion's forces had grown since the first strike, but the Council's retaliation would be swift. They had no illusions about the danger. They were marching into the lion's den, and they knew they might not all make it out alive. As the ships activated their engines and began their approach to the Galactic Council's stronghold, Kiera couldn't help but think of Eli. The young boy, tortured and broken by the Council, had become a symbol of everything humanity stood for: resilience, strength, and the burning desire for justice. He had become more than just a survivor. He had become a weapon the Council had never seen coming. While the fleet moved forward, Eli was already deep within the Council's command center, using his newfound abilities to infiltrate their systems. The technology that had been used to torture him had now become his tool, his means of exacting vengeance. With each passing second, Eli was weakening the Council's defenses from the inside. The moment of reckoning was near. Back on the rebel flagship, Kiera paced the command deck. The feeling of impending battle hung in the air, and yet she couldn't shake the doubt that gnawed at her. They were going into the heart of enemy territory, and their chances of survival were slim. But she had seen humanity's strength in action. She had seen what they were capable of when they fought together. And if they were going to take down the Council, they would do it with everything they had. "We'll reach the heart of their base in an hour," the ship's navigator said, his voice calm but urgent. "Prepare for engagement. We'll need all hands on deck to breach their outer defenses." Kiera nodded, her resolve firm. "Understood. Everyone, prepare for impact. This is our final push." The assault was underway. As the fleet advanced, the first line of the Galactic Council's defenses appeared. Massive energy shields encased the command center, shimmering with power. But the rebellion had come prepared. The ships fired off their first volley of weaponry, powerful ion blasts designed to pierce through even the toughest shields. The explosion of energy was blinding, lighting up the space around them. "Shields holding," the navigator reported. "We're breaking through." But just as Kira allowed herself a brief moment of relief, the Council's retaliation came swiftly. Ships appeared from behind the command center, flanking the fleet with devastating firepower. Rebel ships exploded into fiery fragments as the Council's warships unleashed a relentless barrage. "This is just the beginning," Kira muttered under her breath. "We have to push through. We cannot let them stop us now." The battle intensified as the rebellion's fleet fought valiantly against overwhelming odds. Each ship that fell only fueled the remaining fighters to press on, knowing that the stakes were too high to back down. The Galactic Council had underestimated them before, and now they were seeing just how far humanity was willing to go. Inside the command center, Ela's eyes flickered as he accessed more and more of the Council's systems. The machinery that had once been used to bind and control him now responded to his every command. He could feel the power surging through him, and with it, a sense of purpose. This was his moment. This was humanity's moment. The lights within the command center flickered as Eli bypassed the last layer of security. He had nearly completed his mission, disabling the mainframe, severing the Council's communications, and cutting off their ability to respond. But just as he was about to achieve total control, he felt a cold presence at his back. He spun around, only to find himself face to face with the highest-ranking officer of the Galactic Council, Commander Varys. The alien's eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light as he regarded Eli with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "You are brave," Varys said, his voice cold and menacing. "But you cannot stop us. The Galactic Council is eternal." Eli didn't hesitate. "The only thing eternal about you is your arrogance," he shot back, his fingers flying across the console, triggering the final command. A massive tremor shook the command center. The walls quivered, and the systems began to shut down. Varys' expression shifted to one of fury as the power flickered out. His last words were a growl. "This is not the end. You will regret this." With the command center falling into chaos, Eli turned and sprinted toward the nearest escape route, knowing that the final battle for the galaxy had begun. The tide of war had shifted, and the rebellion was now closer than ever to victory. But they still had one final challenge to overcome. The heart of the Council's empire was now vulnerable, and they had to strike before it was too late. Kira's voice crackled through the comms. "Status report, Eli. We're almost there." Eli's reply was brief but filled with determination. "I've disabled their systems. Get in here and finish it." The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. And this time, there would be no turning back. The wrath of humanity. The final push had begun. Kira stood at the helm of the flagship, her heart pounding in her chest as the fleet closed in on the Galactic Council's heart, the command center that controlled the entire empire. The fleet was battered, its numbers dwindling, but the remaining ships were driven by a singular purpose: revenge for the atrocities the Council had committed. The human spirit had proven resilient, and now the rebels would show the galaxy the true strength of humanity. No longer would they stand by while their people were tortured, murdered, and enslaved. No longer would they be subjugated to the whims of those who considered themselves gods. The Council had made a fatal mistake, and humanity was about to pay them back in full. "Ready the weapons," Kira commanded, her voice unwavering despite the tension in the air. "We go in hard. No mercy." The fleet's remaining ships surged forward, their weapons aimed at the now shaken Council defenses. Kira's orders were simple: hit them where it hurt, and don't stop until the job was done. They would strike quickly, decisively, and with the full force of their might. The Council's once impenetrable shield was crumbling, and the rebellion had them in its sights. As they entered the outer ring of the command center's defenses, the full scale of the assault became clear. The fleet was met with a barrage of enemy fire, but the rebels were ready. Ships darted through the chaos, weaving in and out of enemy fire, returning with destructive blasts of their own. For Kira, it was all too familiar: chaos, death, and destruction. But it was different this time. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was revenge for every human life that had been lost to the Council's cruelty. On the ground, Eli moved swiftly through the corridors of the command center, his fingers working the controls to ensure that the Council's systems stayed offline. The boy had been through hell, tortured and tested by the very beings he now aimed to destroy, but he had become something more. He had become the key to humanity's victory. He had become the symbol of their resistance. As the rebellion's forces neared the command center, the tension escalated. The Council knew it was losing, but they were not going down without a fight. A massive wave of reinforcements appeared, pouring in from the far reaches of the Empire. But it was too late. The rebellion had the upper hand, and the Council's response was fractured and disorganized. Eli, we're almost there. Kira's voice crackled through the comms, her tone determined. We need to finish this. Eli's heart raced as he continued to sabotage the system. The countdown to the final assault was ticking. He had one last task: to disable the heart of the Council's power, the central core that maintained control over the entire Empire's communications and military networks. If he succeeded, the Galactic Council would be rendered blind, defenseless, and powerless to retaliate. He reached the core's control panel, his fingers hovering over the activation sequence. He knew this was the moment. If he succeeded, the Council would be crippled. If he failed, humanity's hope would falter. His hand slammed down on the panel, and the core powered down. An enormous tremor shook the command center as the energy flow to the Council's warships, communications, and weapons systems ceased. The rebellion's forces were now free to do what they had come to do. A chorus of cheers erupted across the fleet. The human spirit had triumphed over the alien tyranny that had sought to crush them. The Council's once feared empire was crumbling, and the rebellion stood victorious. But the war was not over yet. The battle for freedom had been won, but the fight for justice was just beginning. Back on the flagship, Kira felt the weight of the moment. The battle had cost them dearly. The fleet was decimated, and many of her comrades had fallen. But as the command center's defenses crumbled, she knew that the rebellion had achieved something monumental. The Galactic Council, once an unstoppable force, was now on its knees. Prepare for the final strike, Kira ordered, her voice full of resolve. This is our last chance to make them pay. As the remaining rebel ships closed in, they launched their final assault. Explosions rocked the command center as the flagship's weapons hit their targets with deadly precision. The Council's defenses had been shattered, and now they would be wiped from existence. Inside the command center, Eli stood tall. The boy who had been tortured, broken, and betrayed by the very people he had once trusted had become a symbol of defiance. His every step was a reminder of humanity's resilience, and his actions had forever altered the course of history. His voice echoed in the silence of the control room. This is for every life you've destroyed, Eli whispered to the empty room, his heart filled with a mixture of rage and relief. Outside, the final explosions echoed through the cosmos. The Council's empire was no more. The humans had triumphed, not just through their strength, but through their unyielding will to survive. They had fought for their freedom, their future, and they had won. But Kira knew that this victory, though monumental, was only the beginning. The galaxy would change now. The humans had shown the universe that they would never be crushed, never be silenced, and never bow to anyone. The Galactic Council had learned a valuable lesson that day. Underestimate humanity, and you would pay the price. This was just the first chapter in the rise of the humans, an unstoppable force that had claimed its place in the stars. As the last remnants of the Council's empire burned in the distance, Kira looked out at the stars with a sense of peace. The fight was over, for now. But the galaxy would never forget the day humanity rose to take its rightful place. The universe was forever changed, and humanity was just getting started.